Yeah, and Aki, as you are also
Yes.
known, is executive director of the Filipino Workers Center in Southern California. First, tell us a little bit about the Filipino Workers Center.
Sure. Well, Filipino Worker Center has been around for since 1997, and a majority of our membership base are domestic workers, caregivers
Mm-hmm.
who are live-in one-on-one caregivers, and a lot of them are new immigrants, although not all of them, and a lot of them have high educational backgrounds in the Philippines, but when they come here, it's the only kind of opportunities that they can find. So this is an organization where we come together to collectively build our power, build our voice, because Filipinos were the largest Asian population in Los Angeles City, but
Really?
our presence is not felt. Our issues are not really in the forefront or in the public realm. So we're trying to build that voice for our community.
Right, and also I found that many of the women who are working as domestic workers, as caregivers, who are immigrant, may also have families and children back in the Philippines or back in the country that they came from, and also have financial responsibility for supporting themselves here as well as a family back home.
Well, absolutely. A lot of the immigrants from the Philippines who are here are basically kind of economic refugees, forced out of their country because there's no economic opportunity to support their families. And this is a policy of the government to encourage people to go abroad so that they earn money like dollars and send them back as remittances to their families. So a lot of families in the Philippines are dependent on these remittances. We send over $30 billion from around the world back to the Philippines because one of the largest exports is workers.
Right, and when you look then at the poverty wages, looking at some of your material where the average annual income for domestic workers is a little over $22,000 a year, and you're trying to survive in Southern California with rents and food being as high as it is, as well as support families back home. So tell us basically what you and others are aiming to do with pressing forward for this domestic workers Bill of Rights.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are being so bold as to ask for an entire Bill of Rights for domestic workers that has 11 different demands on it.
Okay.
This is to really bring up this whole issue out of the shadows of our community because domestic work, as you said, is not recognized as real work. And of course, part of that is because of the gender lens, or that women's work is not real work. And domestic workers were excluded from the National Labor Relations Act because the southern states did not want them to be included in all of the rights that were given to workers.
The former slave states.
Exactly. So many domestic workers do not even have the right to overtime, to breaks, like meal breaks and rest breaks, to workers' compensation. The first part of the bill is really to bring equality back into the law. Domestic workers and farm workers were the ones who were excluded back then. So, and back then they said, oh, well, later on we'll fix this problem and bring them into the laws. But it's been, almost 50 years and still there hasn't been equality. So the first parts of it, overtime for all domestic workers, the right to workers' compensation, the right to meal and rest breaks, the right to safe and healthy workplaces, to be actually regulated that their workplaces are safe by OSHA. These things would and reporting time pay. These things are rights that all other workers already have that we just want to also extend to domestic workers.
Right, and a lot of people are unaware of the conditions, particularly domestic workers who live where they work. And I see that one of the protections that you're going for is uninterrupted sleep. I mean, the right to have some sleep. And we interviewed some domestic workers around Labor Day here on our show, and one of them slept where she worked, and she talked about, these parties that go on into the night till 2 or 3 in the morning, and then she has to be up, again early, getting breakfast for the children, etc. So tell us a little bit about those conditions.
Well, it is amazing. Actually, our first demand was the right to sleep, even 5 hours of sleep. But you need actually really at least 8. And there are so many domestic workers that on a very consistent, regular basis do not have this right, especially with live-in caregivers who are taking care of those who are bedridden, and they're their only caregiver 24 hours a day, where they have to turn them every 2 hours, where they have to always be alert, sleeping at the bedside or on the floor next to their consumer, where they always have to be alert, have to be ready to wake up and bring them to the restroom. I mean, it depends on the level of care that's needed. So there's some people, caregivers who, like on a very regular basis, don't get this regular sleep, and it just wreaks havoc on their health and their bodies, and it makes it hard for them to give quality care as well, because they're also wearing out their own bodies.
Right, and also you talked here about the right to use of kitchen facilities. I mean, something that's pretty basic, and also to have meal and rest breaks.
I mean, unfortunately, it still seems also in the realm of servitude, rather than that these are workers who are providing important service. So even though they're living in some place, they don't have the same rights. It's like a master servant situation where they can't really disagree. So if the family does not like what they cook, or doesn't like the smell of it, or just doesn't want them to use the kitchen facilities, then they have no other recourse. They have to like pack sandwiches or eat whatever is available to them. We had one caregiver, her client was complaining that she was drinking too much tap water. It's just not your space. You have no ownership over it. So it's a very hard situation where you feel very powerless.
So who in Sacramento is championing this Domestic Workers Bill of Rights here for California? That's AB 889?
Yes.
Is that it?
AB 889. Our champion is Amiano and also Perez from the Assembly. Amiano has really, especially both of them have worked with us to pass a resolution last year to recognize domestic workers and their situation. And this year, they're really moving it forward to, Perez's mother was a domestic worker, and Amiano has just been a great ally and champion who really listens to us and, takes our lead in terms of directing this bill. One thing that's so special about it is it wasn't drafted by, legislators or lobbyists. Really, it came organically from, our coalition of domestic worker organizations convening all of the different domestic workers to work through, what are the real needs and what are the demands that we need.
Right, and for people who want to get involved in this campaign, who want to support this Domestic Workers Bill of Rights and to participate in some of the meetings you have over at the Filipino Workers Center. I see you have one coming up on Tuesday, March 22nd. What should they do?
Yes. Well, I just want to say it's a joint effort, too. It's not just Filipino Workers Center here. We have a whole coalition here in Los Angeles. CHIRLA, Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles, ITEPSCA are like the real strong domestic worker organizations that are moving it forward. Plus, employers and different religious organizations are really coming together around this issue as well. So the event on the 22nd is actually the kickoff of our local Los Angeles coalition for this campaign. And it's also the kickoff of Hand in Hand, which is actually a national organization of domestic workers employers who feel that who stand in solidarity with the domestic workers that they employ for their rights. So if people want to get involved on March 22nd at Filipino Workers Center.
Is there a website that they can go to get information?
Well, they can go to our website at www.fwc.org. www.pwcsc.org, or they could call us at 213-250-4353.
Right, just give that website once again.
Sure, www.pwcsc.org.
Well, I'm